Welcome everyone to this session, running PowerShell in Vim. Just a little bit about myself first. My name is Andrew Prusky. I am a field solutions architect with Pure Storage, have been there since September last year. Before that, I was a SQL Server DBA for around 15 years. And that's how I got started with PowerShell. I was a green, brand new DBA, had a fleet of SQL instances to look after. I had to check things like backup jobs were running, no failed agent jobs. And when I first started, I was doing things like logging on to every single server via Management Studio and checking all the jobs. Hey, it was my first job. No one told me any better. And then a guy called Rob Sewell came along. I was working with him, and he was like, there is a better way. And you can use PowerShell to automate checking all these things. Now, he's off, and he's like a PowerShell guru, and I'm some sort of hack. But here we are today. I'm originally from Swansea in Wales, but I've been living in Dublin, Ireland for around 15 years now, which explains why my accent is a mishmash of here, there, and everywhere. And I've been a Microsoft Data Platform MVP for the last 5 years, hopefully 6 years coming now. My contact details are on the slide there, at dbafromthecold Twitter, and dbafromthecold@gmail.com. So if you have any questions, or you just want to talk about tech, please feel free to reach out. I'm always willing to talk about this stuff. The actual trick, as you're about to see, is getting me to shut up about it. My blog's there as well, dbafromthecold.com, and that's just a mishmash of anything basically I find interesting in tech. I've got a couple of articles about running PowerShell in Vim that I'm basing this session on, but there's a whole bunch of stuff on there on SQL Server, VMware, containers, Kubernetes. You're more than welcome to check that out. And then finally, my GitHub account. All the slides and the code for the demos that we're doing are on my GitHub account. If you want to check that out, I will post an exact link to the repo at the end, and I've got a whole bunch of resources for you as well that you can go and use. So, on to the session. The aim of this session is to take you through the process that I used to start running PowerShell scripts in Vim. I was going to call it my journey, but I cringe when I say that. So it's my process that I used to get this up and running. So we're going to have a look at running single-line commands in Vim, multi-line commands in Vim, how we get a terminal up and running in Vim, and things like a Filetree Explorer and a load of shortcuts and things like that. Because what we're aiming for is this. This is my Vim setup. Now, it pretty much looks like VS Code, but VS Code looks like any other code editor. It looks like, you could say it looks like PowerShell ISE, just in dark mode. We've got our code editor, we've got our terminal, and we've got our Filetree Explorer. This is going to look a little bit different when we do the demos because I'm going to stick it into light mode, and it's zoomed in quite a bit, but that is what I work with. And I use this for pretty much everything. I've done presentations on it. I've done SQL Server migrations on it, and I've written runbooks in it, and I've exported them out. It works really, really well. But I think the big question, the elephant in the room, the one I have to address immediately is why? Why would you want to do this? Well, to get to that point, first thing I should say is I think VS Code is great. VS Code is one of the best tools that Microsoft, along with Windows Terminal, have come out in the last recent years, and developing on Windows is so much better because of it. But I'm a bit of a control freak, and I like getting into the details of things and configuring things exactly how I want them. You have no idea when VS Code first came out how long I spent configuring it and finding a color theme that I liked, browsing through all of them online, trying them out, and then going back to Monachi. So I wanted to build my own code editor, and I wanted a stripped-down version I controlled every single detail of. And I was talking to a boss, previous job, who's a big Linux head, and he said, you should run it in Vim. You should build this in Vim. And I sort of dismissed it because, well, Vim is just that really annoying text editor that you get dropped to when you're working on a Linux server, and then have to work out, A, how on earth do I enter text and edit in this thing? And then B, how do I get out of the thing? And he said, no, Andrew. Vim is so much more than that. There are these things called plugins that you can use. And so I started looking at it. And I didn't realize then quite what a rabbit hole I was going to go down. Because I started looking at it, and I got way past the point of whether I should, because I was obsessed with whether or not I could. And this is what we're going to go on the journey to today. how I got this up and running by messing around, had a few trips along the way, and how I ended up with that finished thing that you saw just then. So first of all, let's do a little bit of history. I want to spend a couple of minutes on this. Vim, it's based on a visual editor, VI, which was built by Bill Joy back in the 1970s. Then a guy in 1988, a Dutch developer called Bram Molenaar. Have I completely butchered that? Yeah? Sorry, Bram. But he worked on something called VI Imitation, which then evolved into VI Improved, so Vim. Released as shareware in 1991, and it has continued to evolve over the 1990s, 2000, 2010 to the present day. There is a massive online community talking about Vim out there. People building plugins, people writing scripts, people configuring things. There are blog posts, Stack Overflow questions that aren't just how to exit, but there are loads of stuff of how you can get out of there. There's a lot of them that I've asked myself. And it's now an open source project. It's still being developed. There's a load of cool things that you can do in Vim. It really is a rabbit hole. If you go down it, you won't come back out. But it's good fun. Now, I want to address this because it really is, it's not an elephant in the room, it's become a meme at this point of how on earth do you exit Vim? And that's just a small sample of me typing in of questions, blog posts, articles of how do you get out of this program. And my boss laughed at me. He was like, it's really simple. It's :WQ, right quit. Yeah, come on, it's easy. And of course it's easy. So once you know it, it's fine. But if you don't know it, yes, we end up with this type of situation with people. I have actually dropped SSH connections on servers purely for the fact that I can't get out of the damn thing. But ironically, if you just type Vim and go into it, it tells you right there how to exit it, :quit. It doesn't tell you how to save, it tells you how to get out of it though. This is a little bit unfair, to be honest, because nobody, for their first time using Vim, just types Vim and goes into a blank screen. You get dropped into it when you're editing a text file on a server, and then you don't get this screen. You get a load of text, and you're there pressing buttons, nothing's happening until you accidentally hit the I key, go to insert mode, and then a load of text appears or disappears, depending on what you've done. Okay. The reason why we have these weird keyboard combinations for Vim, because it's based on VI, and this was the original keyboard that the chap who built VI was using. So we don't have any arrow keys, we have a home key, escape key, but no page up, page down, things like that. I have tried my best, and the navigation is the H, J, K, and L keys. Blah. I have tried my best to use these, but muscle memory, every time I go in, just takes my hand straight back to the arrow keys, page up, page down, home, end, escape. I want to be clear, there's no judgment here. You don't have to be a hardcore Vim enthusiast to use the original key bindings. You can use whatever you want to make it work. As I said, I've tried. My hand automatically goes to the arrow keys. And it's going to really trip me up here because this keyboard is an American US layout. So wait until I start typing. It's not going to be good. But anyway, once we're in Vim, we type Vim. One of the reasons people find Vim, I think, a little bit difficult to work with is the concept of modes. When you first go into Vim, you are in normal mode or command mode. And this is where we do things like file operations, searching, and basic navigation through the file. If you then want to start inserting text, we press I to get into insert mode, and then we can start editing, hit escape, back into control, and that's where we can save. But there's another mode called visual mode. And this is pretty much where you do things like selecting text in a file, bulk line operations, multiple inserts, multiple deletes. And there's also a visual insert mode as well, which you can do some really cool things in. But that's the three main ones. So let's get into how I started my process of working with Vim. So picture me here going, right, I'm all hyped up. I'm going to build my own code editor. How do I get started? Well, I want to run a script. So the first thing I did was open up Vim, write my script, write an exit, navigate where the script was in PowerShell to if it wasn't in the same location, and run my script. Sorted. I am executing PowerShell code that was written in Vim. Now there are there are multiple issues with this process. The two main ones being, it seems rather laborious to do this, as in write everything, save the file, find the file, run the file. The second problem with this, and it is probably the main problem actually, is who here writes flawless PowerShell code the first time? No one? There's always one guy, come on. No? Exactly. So you'd run the script, there'd be an error. You'd have to go back into the script, remember the error, fix the error, save it, run it, and obviously you get a new error and go and fix that. So there has to be a better way. But first of all, let's have a look at building a script in Vim. So can everyone see that at the back? Is that big enough? Yes? Good. Okay, so we go into Vim. Here we are, VI improved, and look, right there, how to exit. So we do let's do PS version table.ps version. Cool, escape, colon, right quit, and we're going to call it test.ps1. And it should be there. Awesome, we've got our script. Right. One of the things that really tripped me up is what on earth is that other file there? That is an undo file. That allows us to, and it's a really cool feature of Vim that I've totally turned off and have never used, but you can actually step through each stage of every change you've made and roll back. There also should be a backup file there, I'm not sure why it's there, which again does exactly what it says on the tin. If something goes wrong, you can roll back to your backup file. There's also a third one called a swap file, and that gets deleted once you've finished editing your file, but it's there just in case, say, you have a server crash, you can get your file back. But we have our file, and yay, excellent. We have built a file in Vim and run it in PowerShell. But as I've said, there has to be a better way. So let's have a look. Wouldn't it be nice if we could execute the code from within Vim in PowerShell and not actually leave Vim? That's where we want to get to really, don't we? So if we want to execute a single line command, we can type it out in Vim and then run a whole bunch of specialist little codes, which is :w bang PowerShell, and that will execute for us. And there we go, we've written PowerShell in Vim, executing the terminal, and gone back in. Cool. Who here only writes single-line commands in PowerShell? Yeah? Nice. Next tripping block. Okay, so we want to be able to write multi-line statements in PowerShell and execute them in Vim. Yes?
Did it require a plugin for PowerShell to initially run, or was that based?
Nope. It's based on if you have PowerShell installed. Oh, is that based on a plugin? Do I need to install a plugin to get this to work, is the question. Yes. No, this is, if you have PowerShell installed, it will execute in PowerShell for you. You can call any shell from that command. So we'll have a look here, and yes, this is where visual mode comes in. We hit visual mode, we select our text, and then bang, colon, bang, PowerShell, we can execute it. So let's have a look at doing that. So we clear that into Vim. Alrighty, so we go to insert mode, PS version table, PS version, escape, colon, .w, basically selecting the current line, exclamation mark, PowerShell. And there we go. Excellent, we're getting there, we're getting somewhere with this. If we want to do that again, we just control colon and up. Nope, escape that, control colon. Why are you playing silly buggers with me? Where am I? Aha. Ha ha ha. I am typing control colon and it's shift colon. So we do up and then say we don't want that stupid annoying logo. We've got no logo there. Excellent stuff. All right, so that's nice and simple, but as I said, you don't execute single line commands in PowerShell. We get rid of that. let's go to insert mode, and let's write a really simple script. Let's do files equals get child item, and we do C / get PowerShell vim test files. Okay, and then for each file in files, and we'll do get content $file.full name. We're just going to print out the content of those files. Cool. Come out of insert mode. We'll go into visual mode, select it all, colon, and see down in the corner here, we've got dash, less than, comma, dash, greater than. That's just telling Vim that's all the selected text. W, bang, PowerShell. It's run the code, but nothing happened. This is a nice little quirk that I came across. What we need to do is put a blank line at the end, and now, when we run it, and we'll do the no logo. There we go, we get the output. So we have to put a blank line at the end to get that running. I don't want to tell you how long it took me to work that out. It's not great. So there has to be a better way. What we kind of want is a terminal just to stay open in PowerShell where we can send code down to. We don't want to have to type that ridiculous command every single time we want to execute PowerShell. So, can we get a terminal in Vim? Well, yes, actually, nice and simple. We can just type colon below term, and that will open up a terminal for us. So we can type our code at the top and then send it down into our terminal and execute it. So let's get rid of all of this. Let's do oh, for God's sake. Okay. All right. Version. Escape that. And colon below term. We've got our terminal. And now to navigate in Vim between windows, we press Control W and the direction we want to go. And we're up there. So now we can type, say, :w PowerShell, and that'll send it down to our Right, okay. What we need to do, okay, to get around this, we come back up, home it, visual mode, select all of our text, and then we need to get this into the clipboard buffer. So Shift, *W, down and W, and then we can paste it. Right. It didn't default to PowerShell, so now we can... Yay! Get in there. This is worse, right? So this is a bit of a backward step. We actually want to take our code and just drop it down into our terminal. We don't want to have to do : and then yank. Yank is cut or copy, and then paste it or put it into the terminal. That's a real pain. So I tried my best to come up with different configurations and how to get this to work without having to actually do too much configuration, because at this point, if I wasn't already in the rabbit hole, I was about to go down it big style, because this is where you start getting into your Vim RC file or your configuration file for Vim. And this usually lives, if you're on Windows, see your home directory and then Vim files, and it gives you the ability to configure everything. You can set your color scheme, set your default terminal, which we want to do because we don't want to go into command prompt each time, we want to go into PowerShell. We can create shortcuts, we can create abbreviations, we can do pretty much anything. Now, the color scheme thing, I've built my own color scheme, and they're laughing because yesterday I built my own custom color scheme, but it's in dark mode. And Rob, during the keynote on Monday, was very much like, please do everything in light mode. So I was sitting there going, oh God, right. And I'll show you why that was a nightmare in a minute when we actually have a look at all of this. We also wanted to have a Filetree Explorer in Vim as well, so we could have a look at everything that's running there. The best one out there, and it's literally the standard, and that is NerdTree. It is a Filetree Explorer for Vim that can be is installed as a plugin, or you just pull the code down from GitHub. There are a load of plugin managers for Vim, but they are mostly Linux-based. So if you're on a Mac, you're probably fine. If you're on Windows, just grab the source code and shove it into your home directory and use it that way. Don't muck around with all of those plugin managers. There are also other stuff out there just to add things like file icons into NerdTree. I've got that all set up, and I'll show you that. The one thing I will say about those is it will slow Vim down noticeably. And it kind of defies the point of this whole project for me, that I wanted this to be lightweight, fast, nimble, nice and easy to use. By installing this stuff, it does slow it down. But let's have a look. Let's come into my text here. Let's get rid of all this. Exit and exit. And then we're going to quit. And what I'm going to do now is enable my vimrc file. This is just a little command that I've got to, all it does is rename my vimrc. So now if I go in, I'm into NerdTree. I'm in my location here, and I can go up in NerdTree with Shift and up. And we'll go into Get, PowerShell Vim, and I can set Git as my actual root as well. Cool, and I've got all these pretty lovely files. If I look at my config files, I've got the Vim there. Nice. And one really cool thing that I quite liked is there are commands to resize windows in Vim, but I'm not memorizing them in any way, shape, or form. I can 100% just move this around whatever I want. Nice and simple. Sorry, did we have a question? Okay, so let's have a look at the plugins for NerdTree. So if I come into my home directory, come down here into my vimrc file, vim files, vimrc, and there's a plugin directory. They don't go in there. They actually go pack, vendor, start, and there they go. I don't know why. That's where they go. You can drop them into the plugin directory all you want, they're not going to work. So we have the three of them there. They're all on GitHub. We have NerdTree. Actually wants help for developing it, but yep. Gives you full instructions installation using your favorite plugin, or just grab the code and shove it into your start file. The dev icons, and then there's this update here. The reason I've installed this one as well is because for some reason on Windows, if you just install dev icons, the color code is a little bit odd. We're talking purple folders, pink icons. It's an absolute disaster. So if you install this one as well, you get the proper colors for everything. But let's have a look at that vimrc file. So I'm going to get rid of my terminal, and let's have a look at, where'd my cursor go? There. Now this is where I say, if you want to go down a rabbit hole, you can. So the first ones really are just generic settings. So set number. I want the number on the left-hand side of my code editor to see where I am. No wrap. Don't want to wrap the text around. Pretty much what it says on the tin. File type, default file type of PS1, PowerShell. Set ruler, it's down in the corner here. You can see where I am, 5-1, if I move it along. Smart indent. When I wrote that longer code earlier, I had to hit tab, go in, it'll do that automatically for me. And then the next three are a little bit odd. These aren't necessary, but it's going to set tab to 4 spaces, set indents to 4 spaces, and expand tab. If I accidentally hit tab, they become spaces. Now, the reason I do this is I do a lot of work with Kubernetes, and when you're working with Kubernetes YAML files, it they do not like tabs. So just in case I forget, tab will always insert 4 spaces. It drove me crazy, actually. You deploy a YAML manifest file to Kubernetes and it errors out on you because of some formatting issue. You're just sitting there going on. And it's because you've hit a tab instead of spaces. Righty, the next load. Let's have a look. So we have no backup, no swap, no undo file. Now you can set these directories and have them all pointed to the same place, and you can basically consolidate them all there, but it drives me crazy. You have to go and clean them up. I don't want to use them. Basically, your mileage may vary if you want to use these things. They can be really handy in certain situations, but I just turned them all off. The next one, we're going to start getting into some more interesting stuff now. NerdTree has a load of text at the top of it by default, which I don't want, so I'm going to have the minimal UI. I just want the files there and the directory I'm in. There's some weird issues with Windows Terminal, so we have to set this term GUI colors. I have a default color scheme called Prusky that I've built. We'll have a look at that now, but oh boy, that's a rabbit hole if you think this is bad. Syntax highlighting on, yep. Want my syntax highlighting. Set cursor line, highlight the line my cursor's on, yep. And now here we go. This is where we get into configuration. This is where I can set my default shell. So if I'm working with PowerShell on Windows, or I'm just using PowerShell 5.1, PowerShell 7, PWSH, and then obviously I don't want that little logo popping up every single time I use it, so /space-no logo. And once again, I will not tell you how long it took me to work out that slash needed to be there in order to get rid of that no logo. Longer than I care to admit. All right, so coming down a little bit further, this is where we start getting into functionality. And this is where we're mapping commands to actions in Vim. And it looks fairly complicated, but what we're saying is when I'm in my code editor, map control and semicolon to yank code, move down a pane, J, control W back up, paste what's in my buffer, which is the :0, and then move back up into my code editor. So basically what we do is when I hit control and colon, execute the highlight, select the highlighted code, drop it into the terminal, execute it, and then come back up. The next one, this was something I found that was particularly annoying, was I wasn't unable to scroll in the terminal. So if I execute a big long PowerShell command and I got a load of output, I would only get the last few lines. So by this no remap in the terminal, if I can press Control B, I can then go up and down in the terminal and have a look at all my code. And then because I can never remember how to get out of it, I've got a note for myself there that says you have to press I to get out of the scrolling. Shortcuts for switching between code and terminal, because you can move Control W down, Control W up, but I just want to be able to press Control / go up and down and move around as much as I want. A couple of other short map for if I want a new window. Can start typing there. Let's get rid of that. Hello. Oh, I did it again. What on earth has happened there? Thank you. As you can see, there's still a few bugs that I'm still tweezing out. And it's also because I'm live in front of you. Cool, so then we've got the split, and then we've got a few abbreviations here at the bottom. So PowerShell will default to PowerShell execution policy, unrestricted, no logo. B-term, so I can type B-term instead of below term, and then just NTree for NerdTree if I want to move things around, if I want to close things down and open them back up. And then the final 2 lines on 67 and 68 there. This is the default behavior that when Vim opens. So when I go into Vim, it'll open up a terminal, and it will open up NerdTree for me as well. Cool. Okay, so let's get rid of that. I said, let's have a look at the color scheme. Yeah, so if I were you, when you first get started with this, don't start doing this because it goes on and on and on. But what some really cool things is you can set the syntax highlighting for things like SQL, YAML. Unfortunately, there's no PowerShell for it. So you have to go in. The way I did this was basically work out, try and change a value, write some code, see what changed, go back in. Basic trial and error. which is why I sort of died inside a little bit yesterday when I realized I had to come up with a new color scheme. But there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of color schemes already built for you out there. And I've got a link. I thought it was PowerShell vimcolorschemes.com or something like that. No, it's not vimcolorschemes.com. Nobody's mental enough to do PowerShell vimcolorscheme.com. But yes, we can do that. But let's have a look at, let's do escape that and Control W. Alrighty, let's get into actually writing some code. So if I come into insert mode and do PS version table, PS version, and I actually need a terminal, so I can type bterm. Where am I? Am I in the terminal? No, there we go, I'm there. Yeah. Excellent. Okay, so now I can just hit Control : boom, done. Yay, we're pretty much there. Not quite. That's a nice simple way of doing things. Let's try a more complicated script. Let's do the same thing as we did before. Files equals get item, and it's get PowerShell vim test files, and then for each file in files, hey, smart indenting. There we go. Cool. Come out of that and execute. This also gets around having to put the space at the bottom that I talked about, the extra line. It's actually just selected the entire text, dropped it in, and executed it for me. So we can 100% type out a whole bunch of stuff now. We can work in our editor, do whatever we want. We can come in and let's go, it's Control/, and we are up. Sorry, I'm not used to working with this light mode and I can't find my cursor. Delete things, move around, Control/ again, down the bottom, clear. Where is my cursor? Escape. There we go. So, thank you very much. That is how I got PowerShell working in Vim. The QR code there will take you to my GitHub repository where I have a whole bunch of resources for you. The NerdTree resources, the 2 blog posts I wrote to get this all set up and the hurdles I went over. If you have any questions, please come and talk to me. Otherwise, thank you very much. Yes, question. The question is, why do I hate my keyboard so much? As in, oh, right. Yes, sir. No, I have had a look at, the question is, have I looked at a repository there that will give me IntelliSense for PowerShell? I am a fickle person and I hate IntelliSense. So I have looked at it and I don't use it. I don't use the PowerShell plugin in VS Code either. It used to drive me absolutely spare. So, of course. Yes. So the question is, have I looked at the mappings for selecting code, executing it, and then passing it back into my input buffer for further execution? Yes, I have had a look at that, but I wanted to maintain my sanity. It is handy, though, 100%. No worries. Any more? Excellent. Thank you very much for coming.